Shane McMahon in the Royal Rumble. That sweaty twat came in, booked himself to outwork genuine UFC fighter Matt Riddle and almost go toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar, and then he couldn't get his sweaty ass over the top rope when he needs to be eliminated.
My absolute worst moment of wrestling in 2022. Again, I'm absolutely going to forget some because there's too much content in my head. But I'm going to go with one that was more disappointing than it was like terrible or awful, or maybe want to rip my own spleen out. But Miro was not on television enough at all. Now, I have been a Rusev fan, well, since I started doing Ups and Downs. That's 2016, so that's 6 years. 6 years of me sticking things on me, saying, come on, save Rusev, push Rusev, and he comes over to AEW and, finally gets his big push as the Redeemer. And I don't know what the reasons are. It doesn't sound like he's injured. It sounds like he did have some movie projects, but that wasn't the sole reason why he was off TV for close to a year. And I think he only had 2 or 3 matches. And every time he was utilised, as far as I was concerned, and maybe I'm biased, I thought he absolutely smashed it. But I hope that's something that changes in 2023, because I think right here you have a diamond in the rough, and he shouldn't be in the rough anymore. He should be the glittering jewel already. But I don't think WWE ever utilised him properly. Currently, I don't think AEW is utilised him properly. And what I mean by that is that I'm such a fan of his, I think he could have a dominant run as the bad guy or the good guy world champion. And I would totally buy it and I would totally believe it. Like, I think he is that good. And he's also just the master at segueing into like different forms of content. So he can be serious, he can be funny, he can be goofy, he can be over the top, he can be endearing, he can be crazy, oh my gosh, all these terrible things are happening to me. So yeah, it doesn't have to be world champion in 2023, even though I would like that. But it was certainly a disappointment. It was certainly something that, as Dynamite would tick away, the weeks would tick away, I'd be like, well, where is he? What's going on? And, no one's under any obligation to tell us. There could be personal stuff. But given that he would turn up on television and there would be no word about where he went, that just makes it all the more confusing. Although there was that rumour recently that he was offered a comeback storyline, and fair play to him, he didn't think it was going to work with what they were trying to achieve. So they're now, the creative team is trying to come up with a story plan to bring him back to Dynamite. So let's absolutely do that, and let's give him a big run. It may not even work. Who knows? I'd be surprised if it didn't, but I think we should try because, yeah, it's just untapped talent, untapped gold. And that was actually something I was genuinely disappointed about. I wanted to see more of that guy. Because as of, in terms of the modern wrestling platform, he's in my top 5 wrestlers. Who else would be in it? We don't want to do that. It's a bad idea. I haven't thought about it. But he would absolutely be in my top 5. That's how much I enjoy his work. So we'll keep everything crossed. Hopefully Miro does return to TV. And we should do the Hardcore Holly idea. I think Hardcore Holly talked about this in his book. If we need an idea for Miro, it should be, well, he beats everyone, he wins the championship, and then he beats everyone else. I think I'd be pretty happy with that.
Literally the same day that the Wall Street Journal published a massive article about sexual misconduct allegations and multi-million-dollar worth NDA agreements, Vince McMahon thinks it's a goddamn great idea to strut out onto SmackDown like nothing's ever happened with his big, bold strut thing that he does coming down to the ring. And he has the gall to just stand there and go, then, now, forever, together, and then bugger off backstage again. What the actual Why did anyone think this was a good idea? And then to double down on this madness, he does the exact same thing on Raw again. And this wasn't like some kind of like farewell tour of Vince McMahon saying goodbye to the fans. If you think that, you're very mistaken. You are absolutely kidding yourself. This was a sociopathic, narcissistic asshole going out there trying to prove that none of this could ever hurt him because he's goddamn Vince McMahon. He built this little world in which he thought he could literally do anything he wanted because it's such a weird little microcosm in wrestling, and he could get away with absolutely anything. And this was proof that he was strutting out there like, nothing can touch me, I'm great. You. And the one good thing about this is that he wasn't untouchable and they actually ousted him. But then when they did that, Stephanie McMahon goes out on TV and leads a thank you Vince chant. Off.
The worst wrestling moment of 2022 feels like one of them things where whatever you say, there will be 5 or 6 more, which thankfully you'll hear from some of my other colleagues, because there were as many great things there were. It was one of them years where there was a lot of ugliness that we had to sort of live through as well. Mine was one that feels forgotten because it just feels from a different generation. Anyway, Lacey Evans' personal life traumas being mined for WWE television content, basically. For those that don't remember, and I wouldn't blame you for this, she was sent out there for several weeks in a row to relive some of the most harrowing events that anyone should be expected to live through, and mostly as a child and in her younger days as well. There was 2 major problems with this. Number one was the fact that WWE fundamentally misunderstood one of their own rules, which is that the gimmick might sell a few t-shirts, but it's the characters that are going to sell tickets. Stone Cold Steve Austin didn't get over and make millions by being a ringmaster that did Ted DiBiase's bidding. The Rock did not become one of the biggest breakout stars in wrestling history by being an actual physical pebble stolen along with some sea glass from Sea Beach. The Rock was super charismatic, who used The Rock as a third-person version of his own name, Rocky Maivia. Stone Cold Steve Austin had this heartless demeanour that could easily be translated into being a working-class ass-kicker. He was not freezing, Chili McFreeze. Lacey Evans' trauma, they almost forgot to manifest as a pro wrestler. It was just, here's all these awful things that have happened in your youth, hit the catchphrase and get out of there. These were 3 or 4 minutes long of deeply dark and disturbing stories that actually happened to her, followed by a 10-second catchphrase. This was the wrong way round of how you're supposed to book a wrestling character. And worse still, far worse still, they always had it in mind that she would be coming back a heel. So you force people, fans by the way, to relive their own traumas through her without a trigger warning, without a content warning, without anything at the end where it says if you've been affected by any of these issues, please contact this number. There was no sense of support for the other people that might have actually felt what Evans felt, but you were supposed to boo her eventually. And that was always peppered within the vignettes as well, that somehow this was going to lead to her being a villain. Worse still, they didn't back down, they doubled down. So she comes out and they instruct Samantha Irvin, the ring announcer, to come on guys, get up on your feet. Lacey Evans has asked you to cheer for her, so that's all coded wrestling messaging for boo this woman. But the WWE fans have been so trained by Vince McMahon to just eat platefuls and platefuls and platefuls of shit that basically they're left to just do what they're told. She comes out as a heel and is cheered. So not only is WWE messaging not cut through, the character now doesn't make sense. So they draft her to Raw, where she is a babyface for 2 weeks, and then they draft her back to SmackDown, and then they beat her straight away. So the character is dead on arrival. She's repackaged twice more in 2022 alone, and the weeks and weeks and weeks of horrific, traumatic abuse, death within the family, just the most awful things to live through, were for absolutely nothing, completely zip. As I record this, we are watching Lacey Evans show that she's retraining as a Marine for the trials and tribulations of WWE, as if all of that she was forced to go through did not matter. You will never hear about this again. You will never hear about Lacey Evans' difficult upbringing as part of the character. She will go off and do something completely new. It was all for waste, and goodness knows what people had to live through in order to suffer through those vignettes.
One of the worst moments of the year for me was WWE proving yet again how unprofessional and childish they can be regarding the Sasha Banks and Naomi walkout and how WWE responded to it. This proves yet again that WWE is just a company that holds grudges and throws disdain around as if it isn't a publicly traded company. Instead of going quiet, they just went on air to bury these stars, having Michael Cole come on and say how disappointed we should all be and how they let all the fans down, much in the same way that Vince and JR, Ric Flair, The Rock, etc. had to come on TV and do the same for Austin all those years ago. Instead of resolving the situation backstage and not making a big stink of it, WWE threw the lit match on the gasoline-soaked bridge and pretty much guaranteed that Sasha Banks and Naomi don't want to come back. I mean, never say never in wrestling, we all know that, we all say that, but it's not like WWE is the only game in town for stars like these, like Sasha Banks, for example, who's already done some acting and apparently is showing up in New Japan now. Like, there's a lot more opportunities out there than WWE seem to recognise, and I'm sure, yes, they'll get on great without them, but if they turn back around and said we're ready to come back, do you think WWE would say no? No. But are they going to do that after they've been treated this way by a publicly traded company? It boggles the mind.
The whole of the Royal Rumble. It was terrible, right? Seth and Roman had a good match, but then Roman just got himself DQ'd. Brilliant. Then Roman showed up later on to help Bobby Lashley look like a bit of a bitch in beating Brock Lesnar and still celebrating it. Doudrop worked Becky Lynch, which would have been a great match if she wasn't called Pissing Doudrop. And then let's talk about the 2 Royal Rumble matches. First of all, I didn't know who anyone was because I didn't recognise half of the themes when people came out. The Women's Royal Rumble, you had Phil Chambers, who eliminated Molly Holly in that one.
Shut up, Wilborn, I don't like talking about it.
So there you go. You had the bit where they did with the Riot Squad. Oh, that's nice. Out you go. Bollocks to you. The Bellas are better than you anyway. And then Ronda Rousey, to a decent pop, came out, won the whole thing, and we went, oh, wait a second. It's just a load of part-timers who are going to win these Royal Rumble matches. Cut to the Men's Royal Rumble. Yes, Brock Lesnar won. I'm not actually as bothered about that. I'm more concerned about Shane McMahon and his involvement in that match. First of all, Shane McMahon got more eliminations in that match than Big E, Montez Ford and Sheamus combined, okay? Kofi Kingston botched his spot. That's a sure sign that the Rumble absolutely bloody sucked. But then, yeah, I basically should have said Shane McMahon in the Royal Rumble because that sweaty twat came in, booked himself to outwork genuine UFC fighter Matt Riddle and almost go toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar, and then he couldn't get his sweaty ass over the top rope when he needs to be eliminated. What a knobhead. The Royal Rumble sucked. Literally, Triple H could book Natalya to win it next year, and it would instantly be better. And think of how low a bar that is.
2022's been a weird one, hasn't it? Because there's been a lot good, a lot of epic, huge moments, like crowd-popping moments, and a lot of controversy and weirdness and really bad moments as well. And for me, I know you could point to a lot of maybe other ones that have been mentioned in this video already, but for me, the Big E stuff was really hard to digest and really difficult to talk about and cover as a channel, because me and Phil were obviously the Saturday morning after that Friday night SmackDown, and you saw all the kind of updates online when it was happening, and it was one of them moments where you're just like, nah, that can't be true. That can't happen. I've misread it. I've like not watched it properly or something. You know, you're kind of weirdly in denial because Big E's such a legend, just an absolute legend of a human. Like there's not a person in this industry that's got a bad word to say about Big E because he's just an all-out epic guy. Does so much for everyone, for charities, just for everything. Everyone here at WhatCulture loves him. So it's one of those things. Seeing a person like that suddenly have the net, it's hard to kind of like talk about. It's one of them, just watch that happen. It was surreal. And then I think that the main positive probably, or one of the only positives to take out of it at the time was just how quickly everyone reached out to Big E and how much support he hopefully felt from everyone. It looks now that he's like back on that road to recovery, and he survived a real scare because it could have been dreadful, that kind of injury. And he looks to be back on his feet and having a good quality of life, or a decent quality of life at this point. That's the most important thing. If he ever does wrestle again, that's great, hopefully, because it's something that he loves doing. That'd be amazing. But him just living a long, healthy life at this point is a miracle in itself after watching that. So that's for me, that was the hardest thing that I've had to watch and cover this year for WhatCulture. And yeah, all the best to Big E. I hope he's smashing life, doing whatever he's doing at this current moment, because he's a legend. He deserves the world, damn it.
I've got two. I'll get the first one out of the way very quickly. Wrestling Twitter. I'm chronically obsessed with it. Right? But a great little bit of a twist, even though it was my worst wrestling moment of the year, okay? I've had to endure just complete morons sit there and say, matches need stories. And who's that? Just use Google. Right. Wait there. Leave this in. I'm going to prove how quickly it is to use Google. Very, very quickly. Honestly, anybody else who's not nervous in front of camera could even do it more quickly than this. Right? There's the browser. God damn it, okay. I don't know who that is. That needs a story. Did Action Andretti, a complete unknown who generated a hotter atmosphere than I've heard on most TV shows this year, need any introduction? Did he need any build to his match? No, because wrestling is a story. Now that that's off my chest, the real worst moment is the money left on the table with CM Punk and FTR versus the Elite in a trios match. It could be the hottest match. FTR and the Young Bucks have already got this absolutely brilliant and criminally unexplored chemistry. If you add this shoot stable war of real life animosity and personal wrestling philosophy into the mix, it could be absolutely unbelievable. Like, and as well, AEW, I've kind of given up on the idea that they might beat WWE in the ratings. I just think they've pretty much tried everything. The brand value just isn't there. It's not going to happen. If they've got any kind of chance, it could be the return of CM Punk, because at this point it feels as unfathomable as it did before he actually returned.
Yeah.
And I love the story of him sharpening up, getting rid of the ring rust, improving his cardio, like getting tested against sort of like really inexperienced or journeyman wrestlers. They had to tell that patient story to get to the heft of his achievement, but this time they don't have to. They could do a lights out and he's in the ring. It would be amazing. They can get straight to the business of the biggest money match in all of wrestling. Like, they need to do this, I think, if they want, in fact, to compete with WWE, which feels like it's not happening anymore. And it's just the kind of thing that compels you to fantasy book. It's not just Tony Khan making more money. I personally couldn't give a toss about that. My personal wrestling enjoyment in one of the hottest atmospheres ever. Just the fantasy booking spots you could come up with. Imagine if this trios match is happening, right? CM Punk is kind of wobbly, he's selling in the ring. Matt Jackson gets that devil in his eye and he decides, I'm going to rub his face in shit and do the buckshot lariat and mess it up right in front of CM Punk's face. What if CM Punk then hit a V-trigger on Matt Jackson's face? Actually, I can do one of your moves and I've just broken your nose again. I've just blackened your eye again with it. Like, it could just be absolute magic. They're all a bunch of children who need to sit down, thrash it out and give it to me and literally everybody else who likes AEW who wants it.
And everyone on Twitter needs to touch grace.
Touch grace.
I've gone for a personal one rather than a wider reaching thing. There are certainly more harrowing things that have happened this year in this sport, and things that are more worthy of a deep dive. But from my standpoint, as a consumer of pro wrestling, something that's had a really detrimental impact on my fandom personally is the Japanese clap crowd situation. As you know, that was dubbed early on. Of course, COVID restrictions in Japan have been pretty severe, pretty conservative, it's fair to say. They've been long lasting. And at live events in the country, they've had heavy limitations on the noise you can make, on attendances, on how people are sat. And it's obviously been very effective in preventing the spread of the virus in Japan. Their numbers have been, steadily a lot more convincing than they have in Western countries, like ours in particular. But at the same time, from a wrestling fan standpoint, and obviously they shouldn't really be taking the views of wrestling fans into account when they're deciding these major protective measures that save people's lives. Andy Murray not enjoying a Noah show as much is not really that important, but Japanese wrestling's kind of my thing. It's how I indulge away from work. We all cover the AEW and WWE shows, but I think you need a bit of a different flavour when you go home and you watch for fun, not necessarily for coverage. DDT's my favourite company. I love Tokyo Joshi Pro. I love Stardom. I love Noah, Dragon Gate, all this stuff. It's really difficult to enjoy these companies when all you hear is a polite ripple of applause. And yes, we're moving towards a situation now where certain venues in certain cities do have the cheering. Wrestle Kingdom's going to have a cheering section, I believe, but it's just not the same. The atmospheres are flat, and increasingly these regulations feel a bit draconian. I hope there's a way out of the woods in 2023, but in 2022, my enjoyment and watching and consumption of these things just went right down the drain. It's a real shame. For me, the best wrestling nation in the world, hampered by restrictions. I hope that they're able to find a balance between keeping people safe and bringing noise back to live events, because it's not there at the moment, and it kind of sucks.